Welcome, welcome to our first day of review. Here we go. First things first, we want to make sure if you are missing any projects whatsoever, let's get those turned in first. That's going to be really, really important. Those are each worth 40 points. So they are the largest part of our grade, each of those projects. So getting those submitted is going to be key to finishing strong. Another thing I wanted to mention too is if you have any artwork that you have not yet added to the halls of frame, you can also do that here. In fact, if you click on where it says add your work to the hall of frame, it'll take you to all of them. So feel free to do that. All right. From there, let's start our review, shall we? We are going to be having a quiz in a few days, and my job is to make sure that you're feeling comfortable with all these things we've been learning throughout of our semester together. There's going to be a total of 15 questions on the quiz, and I can guarantee you as long as you are paying attention for these couple of days, and obviously you've been in class for the semester, these are all things we've been learning all along, but we're going to be reviewing them and reviewing them and reviewing them over the next few days, so that by the time you see them on the quiz, easy peasy, you've got this. The quiz is multiple choice as well. So let's start with warm and cool colors. Warm colors. I tend to, when I think of warm colors, I like to visualize, surprise, surprise, your art teacher likes to visualize what something looks like. I like to visualize a warm fire. Okay, warm colors, a warm fire. So if I were to color in a picture of a warm fire, what colors would I use? Red, orange, and yellow, of course, right? So those are our warm colors, and any of those hues in between. So if we're talking like a dandelion color, kind of like that orangey yellow, yeah, that's a warm color too, right? Even pink is a warm color, because what is pink? Well, it's red with white added to it, so white is a neutral. Red, though, is a warm color, so yeah, pink would be in there too. So any of those colors on that side of the spectrum are going to be considered our warm colors. Our cool colors, then, I like to kind of visualize that I'm sitting on some grass under a tree, a leafy tree, and my toes are dipped into a nice, cool, deep lake. So the grass is green, the leaves are green, the water is blue, and in those areas where the water is really, really deep, it almost has that purple hue to it. So that's what I like to visualize when I think of cool colors. And once again, anything in between. So if you're talking about kind of like a teal color, like that greenish blue, well, yeah, that's going to be a cool color as well. So usually when we're saying warm colors, we always say red, orange, yellow, because then it implies anything in between as well. And then when we say cool colors, green, blue, and purple. All right. So you can see once again that basic color wheel. You can kind of see some more of those hues, those in-betweens, like I was talking about before. So once again, that visualization of, maybe the sun or fire for warm colors, and water and grasses for the cool colors. Okay, so let's go back then to some of our other ones. Gradients. Let's talk gradients next, because there will be questions on this as well. So a color gradient, it involves when we transition from one color to the next, and the goal is going to be that there's no line. Okay, so think of when we see that sunset, there isn't like here's yellow, line, here's orange, line. No, it fades, right? So kind of like another word that we see often is ombre. A color gradient is going to be that ombre effect, where it's just gradually from one color to the next, with no stop or start point from when one color ends to the next one beginning. Okay. Another thing, so when we did that, where we spun the drill really, really fast and it had all the colors together, do you remember that? It had the whole rainbow on there. And what happened when we did that? The sum of all colors was white. Now, just to clarify, we're talking color theory here. So if all colors go through a prism, it makes white. It's different than mixing colors. If I were to mix, like I had a paint of all 6 colors and I put even amounts of each, it's actually going to be brown just because you're combining all the complementary colors. But the sum of all colors, when we're talking light theory and putting the light together through prism, it's white. So the sum of all colors is white. And that demo we can watch, but it kind of shows that happening in real time. So then what happens if we remove all colors? If we had like a color vacuum and we sucked out all the color, there's no color remaining. The absence of color is black, right? The absence of color is the absence of light. So what happens when we pull all light and color away? We're left with what we call black, which is actually not a color. It's the absence of all color, but that's a little bit cerebral. So we often just call that color, the color, black, right? So there are going to be questions on that on the quiz too. White is the sum of all color. Black is the absence of color. A shade is created by adding black to a color. So if I add black to it, it's going to create a shade. And I like to think of that like a shadow, right? Or if you pull down the shades on a window, it gets darker. So shade is when we add black to a color. And you can add it to any color. It doesn't have to be yellow. It can be blue. It can be whatever. But we're adding black to a color is going to make a shade. Okay, if we add white to a color, that's going to be a tint. If we add gray to a color, that's going to be a tone. So, complementary colors then are opposite each other on the color wheel, and they make each other appear brighter. So you can see yellow and purple would be complementary colors. So when they're next to each other, they appear more, they have more color intensity, more brightness than when they are alone. And so those colors often go really, really nice with each other because they pop is another way of saying it, right? They just like, wow, that really pops. If this orange flower was on a different color background like green, it wouldn't pop as much as it does against the blue. Okay, so here's green and red then. And you can see once again that pops. So they're opposite each other on the color wheel, and they just make each other more intense and make each other pop more. Okay, so once again, color intensity. I know we kind of talked about that along the way, but with the color intensity, if we have that color straight out of the tube, it's the most intense it's going to be. Once we start mixing it with other colors, that's when we start to lose intensity. It becomes more muted and dull, like you're seeing here, right? We're adding shades of gray as that goes across the screen to the right. So we're losing intensity. It's becoming more muted, which isn't a bad thing because sometimes that's what we're going for in our artwork. Okay, so there's the more saturated colors here on the left, and then the more neutral on the other side. Okay. All right. Next up, pattern. As a reminder, pattern is something repeated, right? It's repeated over and over and over again. It could be a line, it could be a color, it could be a shape. It's organized though, and that makes a pattern. So we have things called implied pattern, where we draw them, and we have things called actual texture, or let me get to some of these other ones. There we go. So actual texture is going to be where it like actually is that. Like, so if you think of, let's say, a pine tree, it actually does feel that way, right? Whereas if I drew a picture of a pine tree, it might look like it's got some spikiness to it, but it's just implied because if you were to actually touch that paper, it doesn't feel that way. Anyway, here's some examples of some patterns, and look at how cool some of these are, causing some optical illusions along the way. That was cool, right? Woo! It's a lot going on. Anyway, so patterns, they can be busy, but man, they can be cool too. And then of course we've got symmetry as well. So symmetry is when something looks the same on one side as it does the other side. All right, so we're seeing here if we were to divide that heart down the center, we've got symmetry. It's like this, right? You fold it in half and it matches on those sides. or like that mirror effect like we're seeing here. So this was symmetry, that is not. That's just the same picture again, right? All right. So there's a diagonal line of symmetry, and then we have what's called rotational or radial symmetry, where we can actually turn it, and it's going to show that. And that's that's the umbrella under which our cards were. Our cards were point symmetry, so you can't rotate it every single way, and it's going to be rotational symmetry, but when you rotate it 180 degrees, it looked the same this way as it did, see, this way, right, with our cards. So that was a type of rotational symmetry called point symmetry that we use on our cards. All right. Feel free, if you need to go back through any of that or rewatch any of it, you absolutely may. But your next goal is going to be to play these 3 games. You're simply going to click here, and now, mind you, you might need to like sign in, just type your name and your grade level if it asks for it. But you're going to click on each of these, and it's going to be a review game. Play them. Please play them. The more you get yourself used to these terms and knowing what they mean, the easier that quiz is going to be in a few days. Some of the questions are very directly linked to what you're going to see in the quiz. So play those 3 games, have fun with it, repeat them as needed as well. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some time to do that. Have fun.